introduce my social psychology project, which involves me breaking a social norm. You may be asking, what is a social norm? Well, a social norm is an unwritten rule of behavior shared by society, which is guiding how people should behave in different situations. And for my social norm, I decided to read Dr. Seuss's book, Green Eggs and Ham, out loud in public in different spots of San Francisco. So for this project, I went to 5 different locations in San Francisco. Some of these spots I went on same days, and then other ones I went on different days. For the first spot, I went to a park that's in front of the Conservatory of Flowers, which is in front of the JFK Promenade Road in Golden Gate Park. The second spot, I went to Pier 39. And then on that same day, I went to the McDonald's that is in the Fillmore District. For the other 2 spots, I went to the Muni bus line, specifically the 28 bus. And then on my last spot, I went to the Gleason Library at the University of San Francisco. So usually when you're reading a book, you're in public, you're not reading it out loud in an obnoxious volume. And then for someone of my age, of a college student, it's not common to read a children's book either. Usually people that will see me reading, you expect to see someone of my age reading a chapter book or a magazine. It's not normal for me to not only speak loudly while reading a book, but to also stand up as I do so. So in some of these situations, I am standing, and in other ones, I'm sitting. So now I will show you guys a couple of clips from the places I went to. The first one is of me in front of the Conservatory of Flowers.
Would you like them here or there? I would not like them here or there. I would not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am.
So if you couldn't tell, many people that passed by me gave me different reactions. A lot of them would glance over, and from afar on their bikes, they would stop or slow down to hear what I would have to say. There was one woman on the phone that passed by me, and I overheard her say on the phone, "People are just reading very loudly today." At some point, there was a man towards the end of the video that stared at me like very intensely. And I thought he was going to come up to me and say something to me, but thankfully he didn't. I expected most people to just pass by and ignore me, which they did. A lot of them did. But I didn't expect for many people to stop a couple of times to hear what I was saying. I expected them to think that I was just a random person being very weird that day. I think that if I didn't break this norm, I wouldn't have gotten those certain looks from people. But I also wouldn't hear the people that pass by me laugh silently or whisper behind my back either. Oh, another verbal response that I got was someone that was finishing a sentence of mine about the book when I was at a certain page. I thought that was very sweet, and I appreciate that someone interacted with me, so that was very nice. So no one really joined me. The only person that interacted with me was the one person towards the end that finished my sentence. I was a bit nervous to do this because this was my first location that I was starting to do my project, but it didn't take long for me to get into it and just become more comfortable with myself. Sometimes I would smile just because I wanted to laugh or I was about to laugh, but I try to stay as neutral as possible. So throughout this video and my project, you will see that I am starting to stand off with sitting down, or I stand up, or I'm trying to do something very natural or something else so that it transitions very naturally to me reading. So usually I'll be sitting down and then I'll stand up to read, or I'll be doing something else and then I'll stand up to go read. But I wanted to be as natural as possible so most people around me wouldn't be suspicious of what I was doing. So now I will show the next 2 clips. The first one is from Pier 39, and then the next one is inside of the McDonald's on Fillmore District.
That's Sam I am. That's Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. I don't like this here or there, and I do not like this anywhere. I do, yeah. I do not like.
It's so visible.
Yeah, I look like I'm like, you know, chilling.
That's Sam I am. That's Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham. In a box? Would you eat them with a fox? Not in a box, not in a fox, not in a house, not with a mouse. I would not eat them here or there. I would not eat them anywhere.
So as you guys can see in the first location, because it's a touristic spot, I got a bit more interaction and looks from people that passed by me. So in the video, if you couldn't tell, but 2 people interacted with me towards the end, and I got a lot more laughs, especially from people that were my age or younger than me in the pier. There were more families around that area, so there were many toddlers that passed by me, and they would look up and try to listen to what I was saying for a bit. And then some families that would sit in the bench across from me or somewhat next to me, I would hear them laugh and look over at me when I was reading. But many people that I saw would just nod in agreement with me when I was just reading my book. And overall, I had way less negative reactions from people at the pier. I think because it's a touristic spot, everyone was more positive because they thought I was probably just some other performer, just like another normal person around the area that's just doing what I normally do at the pier, which is, you know, it's very performative. I wasn't really ignored, and when I met with more positive than negative reactions, it made me less nervous. At the McDonald's, I was also met with positive reactions, but not many people interacted with me. I just ate my meal and I read my book as usual, but a few times I would feel bad because I was now inside an area than outside. So my voice would sometimes go quiet. And then I noticed that at some point there was a man, I think behind me, or I glanced over, who was smiling and laughing from afar when I was reading. There was also a family in the corner that would turn around a couple of times, mostly the kids in that group. They would turn around to hear me read. And I think the McDonald's that I chose to do this in, we got used to seeing people from outside coming in, just doing out of the normal activities. So I think that me reading a book out loud inside wasn't the worst thing that the workers had to deal with, because a lot of the workers just ignored me. In those situations though, I felt very comfortable, and it did take me a minute to get myself prepared to read in public again. But I think what helped me is that I think about how no one knows me where I'm doing this at, and I would never see these people again in the future. So the only thing that I struggled with is the fact that I was inside of the McDonald's and I would go quiet a few times, but that was just because it was an enclosed area. And then unlike the pier, it's in an outside area, so it's okay to be loud, so that's more socially acceptable. Okay, and now I'm going to show you the last 2 clips, the one of me on the bus line reading, and then me in the library reading.
That's Sam I am. That's Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like that Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Would you like them here or there? I would not
So now in these last two spots, I struggled a bit to start reading because I felt more embarrassed to do that. These two spots, the areas that I was in were a lot of people from my school, or there were a lot of people that were around the same age as me, and I would hang out in those areas more often, and I know a lot of those people hang out in those areas often, so I was a little embarrassed. But the bus line that I rode is the one that takes everyone to a really popular boba shop where I'm at, so that's one. And then the library was at my school's library, so I knew there would be people there that I knew I would recognize, or there would be people that would recognize me. So yeah, a little embarrassing. But you know, there were times I tried to long at the beginning before I started reading my book, but I had to rethink, like, you know, hey, I don't want to do this at a different time. But then I would also think, oh, I should do it at a different time. But you know, I went through with it in the end. So on the bus and in the video clip, you can see that there were two people next to me. This one person was looking over a lot, and towards the end when I was reading the last bits, their face looked more annoyed at me than entertained than other times. Well, that's what I thought she was giving off. I thought she was more annoyed. There were other two women that were next to my left that sat next to me, and you know, sometimes they would get quiet, or they would just start giggling a few times, but they just carried out their own conversation towards the end as normal. And I thought in the bus I was starting to get quiet myself, just because I was inside an area again, just like how the McDonald's was, and I just thought, you know, it was more compact in the bus, so everyone could hear me and they could see me. There was a group of high school kids that entered the bus around the middle and boarded on, and they stopped talking in their own conversation to listen to what I was saying, and they would laugh at the end, and then they like hopped off and left. So many people just ignored me on the bus, but they also like found my presence either to be like annoying, or maybe they found it to be funny. That was like the most reactions I was like looking at whenever I would glance up for my book. I think regardless of me reading, I think a lot of the strange activity that happens on the bus, the meeting line, many people just brushed it off and thought that it was normal, and just thought like me reading was just like a common occurrence. So yeah. So the last spot I went to was my school's library, and I had to take a second to compose myself, because you know, I would be surrounded by people I potentially knew, or people that potentially knew me, and I was reading in a quiet area, but it was still okay to be loud in this part of the library, so it's not like anyone was entirely disturbed, but yes. There were a few people that were walking from behind me that would, you know, look over my shoulder to see what I was reading. In the clips, there is one person that you can see that was like looking over to see what I was doing. But yeah, they would just kind of like ignore. And then there were like a few people that were in study rooms in front of me, or like next to me, and I noticed a lot of them would like look into like through their window to see what I was doing, but in the end they just kind of like also ignored, and then they went back to doing what they were doing. There was this one group that was standing just talking outside in the same hallway that I was sitting at, and they stopped talking for a second to see what I was doing, and then they just kind of like proceeded to laugh and then leave the library and just walk out. I think, in my opinion, because it's final season currently, everyone was just in the library at the same time, and people just probably thought that I was doing this for a class or for a final of mine, which funny enough I am. But yeah, I expected people to just kind of come up to me and tell me to like shut up or be quiet, but you know, that didn't happen, which I just think a lot of people didn't care enough to do so. But I'm grateful no one did that to me. Makes me feel better to finish my book. So yeah, I kind of expected that, but it didn't happen, so I'm glad for that. I think when it came to scenarios that I was the most embarrassed about, it just happened to be in the closed off spaces that I was in. So the McDonald's, the Muni, and you know, the library where I was reading. I think it just makes sense just because there will be people that could hear me and look at me easily, unlike the open spaces such as the park and the pier, because, you know, there people could just easily pass by me instead of like, you know, people can just stand and look at me. And also with the people in the open spaces, there are people I would never see again, and they can just forget about me in like the next 5 seconds that they pass me. My embarrassment in those situations, just there was a bias to it because of how others were, I thought how others were thinking. I think most of the time I thought that people were thinking that I was like being weird or I was annoying. But probably most of them didn't think that. They probably did. I also think everyone just kind of accepted my behavior as funny and normal to them. And then once I started thinking like, oh, you know, that's probably what they are. And also like the fact that I was thinking to myself, this will all be over soon. It just made the process easier to start. So yeah. So the goal of my project in the end was to see if I can get some reactions and interactions from people that were around me. And I would say I somewhat succeeded in that. Did I get ignored for the most part? Yes. Did people laugh and whisper behind my back? Yes, they did. But was I able to get people to interact with me, and you know, regardless of that, I did. I was able to get people to interact with me. And you know, regardless of all that, I think people enjoyed it because I heard a lot of laughter from them. So I enjoyed hearing people laugh, and it was nice to get a few like, you know, comments back. And you know, I think they laughed because they enjoyed me embarrassing myself. But you know what? I had a great time overall. I'm glad like I could get a few smiles out of people, so that was fun. Anyways, thank you so much for watching my video project, and I hope you guys all enjoyed me reading